Hi, this is Randy Randall of No Age and host of the podcast Hyphenate with Randy Randall. I want to welcome our newest sponsor of the show, DistroKid. DistroKid helps musicians get their music on all the major streaming platforms, and artists keep 100% of their royalties. Hyphenate listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate. Again, that's distrokid.com/VIP/HYPHENATE. Go get your music streaming everywhere now.
I was babysat by Magic Mountain because you could get like a season pass at like for dirt cheap.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to Hyphenate with me, Randy Randall. This is the show for Thursday, September 19th. Today on the show, I have a very good friend, Mr. Aaron Hemphill from the band Liars, and he has a new solo record out. This is our back-to-back solo record block. We had Dale Crover on last week. We have Aaron Hemphill this week. This is his second solo album for Mute, I believe, and it comes out tomorrow. It's available for streaming everywhere you stream music. It is. You can also find it on Mute Records, and you can buy it directly there. I think he talks about having more tour dates coming up for next year. But as of now, you're gonna find them on the streamers, or you can go buy it there. The name of the record is called Rhetoric Terror, and it's beautiful. I was so fortunate again to get a sweet streaming preview of it, and it sounded incredible. I mean, there's really so much great stuff on there. You can you can go to all of the streamers, like I said. You can also go to store.mute.com. There we go. That's the link I was looking for the Mute store. So it's store.mute.com. And you can also go to Bandcamp, which is amazing. So Aaron's solo project is called Nonpareils. Nonpareils, that's the way it should be said. And it's NONPAREILS official, OFFICIAL. Oh my God, I'm a horrific reader. Nonpareils official.bandcamp.com. It's a gorgeous record. I first met Aaron when No Age opened for Liars. I want to say it was in 2008, and they were nice enough to take us out on tour. We did a whole U.S. tour, and it was fantastic getting to see them play every night. I think that was on their self-titled record tour that they were doing there, and it was so much energy, and I loved just seeing them every night and getting to know Aaron and Angus and Julian, who were the band Liars at the time, with Jarrett Silberman sitting in, who I had known for a long time from The Smell. He was one of the founding members of the All Ages art space, The Smell. Jarrett Silberman was, and he was also a fourth member on extra guitar for that tour. And it was really had that feeling of just like living in the trenches. We were playing all kinds of fun, venues and bars. And I think at that point, No Age had not really played those kind of places. There were some very official sort of venues, and Dean and I had to figure out what our, how to be professionals about it. It was, I think we were still at that point coming at it like kids playing basement shows and house shows. So Liars, I think, helped us sort of understand that world a little bit more, of just being on time for load-ins and sound checks and things. We just had never had to deal with sound checks really that much. Aaron is awesome, and I feel like there's been a lot of shared road. I was so stoked to hear his new record and to hear about his life in Berlin and how all of that has been going, and it was really nice to catch up with him. So don't forget to go to shop.mute.com, find the new Nonpareils record there, and then you can also go to the Nonpareils official.bandcamp.com and order the record there, as well as all the streamers. It's available tomorrow, but you don't want to miss out on the vinyl because it looks like it's going to be really good. Love the artwork. And also go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate and get your music up and out there. I've loved the last 2 weeks. Talking to Dale last week and talking to Aaron this week. It's really inspiring. To be in one band and be known and successful in one project, but also to be inspired and go push the boundaries and express yourself in all kinds of ways. So it's definitely inspiring. And if you are inspired by this, you can go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate and put your music up. Get it out there. If these guys can do it, you can do it too. Aaron, welcome to Hyphenate. Thanks so much for taking the time and jumping on. Calling in from Berlin. How are things in Berlin?
Amazing. It's an honor to be here, Randy. It's incredible to be here. It's like I was super excited to be a part of your podcast because I'm a fan. But then I was like, wow, I get to catch up with Randy. So it's win-win.
Yeah. I think this podcast is a not so sneaky way for me to catch up and socialize with people. It's a good excuse to jump on. Otherwise, we just another 10 years go by. You're like, wait a second, why haven't we caught up?
I totally understand that. That's great. It would give me an excuse to call people when normal people don't need an excuse. So
yeah, well, it's hard. I mean, we've played music for so long and toured all over, and you end up living in different parts of the globe. It's just the nature of living like this.
Yeah, and I wonder, I don't know if it happens with No Age, but for the projects I've been in, it invariably turns you into a hermit.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to crawl my way out of that.
Oh yeah, well it's hard. I mean, I think the world got a taste of that just through the pandemic, and then in the last 4 years, everybody kind of got a taste of that hermit life, and it's pretty attractive way of living, especially if you can work from home. You just never really have to know what day of the week it is or when your last shower was.
You just basically the world got a taste of what it's like to be a touring musician, and they liked it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit too much. You're like, wait, come back to shows. Don't stay home. We need you back at the live shows.
Exactly. Stop ordering delivery and come into our restaurant.
Yes, exactly. Well, that was always the thing from tour, right? It was like, I felt like I lived to be on tour, and then when I would get home, that's right when I felt like I turned into a robot, with the just powered down and just kind of just didn't do anything for months. Because it was nice because you were able to make all the money on the road, and then came home and was just able to kind of loaf around for a while. It's hard to
and it's strange because you had I realize it now, and I should have appreciated it more, but you had such good friends in your face. You didn't have to make an effort to socialize or catch up with them. You saw them every day.
Yeah, whether you wanted to or not.
I mean, I would love to. I miss that, and I'm like, why didn't I take more advantage of that somehow? I don't know how you would, because you're also working, but
but you also end up with close friends that just live backstage. I think there was a period there of about 6 years where I felt like I knew more people outside of Los Angeles than I knew inside of Los Angeles, and I'd see them in Barcelona at a festival, or in a hotel lobby in Berlin, or somewhere at a festival in Tokyo, and you're like, I don't even know where do you live? They're like, oh, I live in Atlanta, or I live in New York. I'm like, well, I'll just see you. You live backstage. You live in a backstage trailer is where you live in my mind.
Or the Primavera lobby posse that you avoid going to breakfast. You're like,
it's great. Again, though, but the stuff you end up missing, the stuff that felt so torturous at the time, and then you go, oh, that was nice. What a nice time that was.
I don't miss the Primavera lobby torture, but for example, seeing you and Dean and Jordan every day was pretty awesome.
Yeah, we had a good crew there. So you have a new record coming out, and that's for all intents and purposes, we're here to talk about that. I really love it. I got fortunate enough to get sent an advanced streamer link, and wow, what an incredible record.
Oh, I'm so glad you like it.
Yeah, I want to make sure I want to catch up and do all the fun stuff we do too. But I want to make sure we talk about the record right off the bat too, because I've been a fan, for decades now. But this output, I really felt like it showed so many sides of you. But really, the part I was really digging on, and that you leaned into a lot in this record, is that lush orchestral sort of string arrangements and choral arrangements, but not just in a kind of a hi-fi way, but almost in a 50s romantic melodrama sort of way. I mean, talk a little bit about that. Some of those arrangements and the ambient
moments are just incredible.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you. Like it's still new for me to talk to someone who's listened to the record, like, cause as a dad, you're so busy. You're like, oh yeah. And you hold it in your hand. You're like, okay, then people are going to hear it. But no, I'm so glad you like it, cause I'm a big fan of yours and what you guys do. But, the arrangements, I think like, how do I like summarize it? Like with this record, I just wanted to, it wasn't even about like expressing different sides of me, if that makes sense. Like I've always loved oldies. I can say that to you. You're from LA, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like the Art Laboe compilations, like, and so I've always loved that. And instead of being in this situation where like, oh, how do I incorporate that? It's just, I just sort of let go and just said, well, I'm just going to make a record, and just make it, just try to be as vulnerable as I can, like put myself out there and just let that guide me, like feel what I'm feeling, and I won't have to worry about incorporating anything. And that's always been like, I've loved oldies since I was a kid. And so I think the more I sort of just thought about music coming from me than parts of me, or like, oh, how do I tap into this interest of mine? It just followed, like the album kind of made itself. And so I hope that answers your question.
No, totally. Just being all of it, being all of you at all times, not having to think about even where does the fence go between one part and another part. It's just all of it. Just all of you.
Yeah, I think like,
same time.
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe in the past I worried that like a part of me would not be present in it, or an interest of mine, or I wanted, like I was kind of policing whether or not I was being genuinely like putting myself in there. I think more and more like I've tried to move away from being so cerebral and doing what I consider to be vulnerable. It may not, people can listen to it and think that it's not, but like moving towards vulnerability, I suppose, and less, like I'm always like, I am how I am. So I'm very concept driven, but that's never been the goal to be communicated in the record. Like this is not at all a concept record, but if I went into detail as to how it's like a bloodbath, so there's still a mess in there, but I think that's okay if I put my emotional spirit into it in the way that I've been trying. I think
it just feels right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of those Art Laboe shows. I remember one of my favorite parts was always when they'd have the dedications.
Yeah, yeah.
And always like, Tina from El Monte, just giving a shout out to Little Puppet.
It's always Little Puppet. Always Little Gizmo and Little Puppet in love forever.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
That's the best. That could sit right on your record. Maybe there's a remix with just dedications.
I'm going to throw it out there because to your listeners, Randy, if anyone has access, I can't remember her name, Shannon Steele. She's a Coast 103 DJ, and she would do those dedications, and so it'd be like, okay, Little Puppet's gonna dedicate a song to Gizmo, and she would read a letter from like Little Puppet, right?
Oh, God,
and it'd be really romantic, like, oh, the first time I saw you, he's pouring his heart out, and the last sentence he would always tie in, he'd always be like, and so Giz, even when the rain clouds are surrounding me, you will always be the wind beneath my wings. He ties in the song, like the title, and then she just rips into like wind beneath my wings, and you're just driving or stuck in traffic, just like,
oh my God.
Love is it. So no, if anyone's got access to those radio shows, I don't know what
your way.
I don't know what I can
on the interwebs.
I'll find you. I'll find you.
I know, I'm Googling right now. I'm like, oh wait, there's too many Shannon Steeles.
Dedication. It's like she did she probably still does it on Coast 103. Yeah. But I would love to know if she was influenced by Art Laboe. But Art Laboe's got a great history though.
Yeah, I mean that was huge. I mean, that's a big part of Southern California. I mean, that's growing up here, it's that just kind of melting pot of all cultures all at once. Especially in the years we were young kids, just kind of taking it all in. Like you flipped around the radio station, and you could be Rodney on the Rock to Art Laboe to who was the guy with the aliens, and the what was his
God,
it'll come to me. There was somebody calling in, it was Love Line, mixed with
when it was Love Line.
And yeah, but yeah, it was a fun melting pot of media in Southern California that you could kind of like, and you'd have to sort of fit in and code switch in some ways too. I forget what part of Southern California did you grow up in?
I mean, for most of my life, I grew up in Newhall. It's right by where Dean grew up, like literally like
near
Santa Clarita, basically. Yeah. But when I was younger, my parents split up early. So my dad lived in Hollywood. He was a phone repairman. Okay. And like I live right on Detroit and Sunset, so it's kind of like you know where that is.
I know where that is. Yeah, right by Highland. Right, Detroit's right there.
In the thick of it.
Cherokee.
Yeah, and my dad was a phone repairman, and he would fix like celebrities' phones. And he told me he came like this is a tangent, but he came home one day, and he's like, "Yeah, Aaron, I fixed Elvira's phone," and I was like, "Oh my god, wow!" And he's like, I was like maybe 7 or 8. I was, of course, an Elvira fan already, but he was like, "Yeah, but she has red hair, and her name is Cassandra," and I'm like. I was too young to understand what he was saying. I was like, well,
that's not real.
You said you fixed Elvira's phone. It was like this kind of like round in circles thing for about 3 hours. Exactly. Yeah. But I grew up there and then in the Valley, like a little bit in Reseda. And then my mom lived in Downey, which.
Okay.
But yeah, for the
South Bay.
Like, mainly like Newhall, so like near Magic Mountain. Like
that's cool.
Yeah.
I think the Michael Myers house is right there, or the Nightmare Before Elm Street house is somewhere right there off of Sunset in like Cherokee or Detroit.
Oh yeah, it's maybe on Cherokee, like on Sunset, like where my dad lived. I drove past it maybe last time I was in LA, and it's mostly like apartments.
Okay,
like just like a row of apartments. I think it's kind of nice now. It's nicer than it was for sure.
Oh yeah, that whole area has gotten way nice, more condos, more high rises. So I mean, crazy. I lived right off of Melrose and La Brea for like 10 years.
Wow!
And so kind of got to know that area once I left, home to go to college and post college world. So yeah, I rode my bike all around there.
Oh wow!
That was a fun time.
Yeah, for sure.
That's incredible. And then so from Newhall to Cal Arts, right? Is that the kind of the evolution?
I actually didn't go to Cal Arts. Like I
didn't. Oh, okay.
No, I worked at a record store in Newhall. So I went when I graduated from Hart High, which is like in Santa Clarita. I went to San Diego to community college, and then long story short, I moved back home, worked at a record store, and that's where I met Angus and some of the people from Cal Arts would go in there because you can special order music. So like I met like Ariel and some other, like I would go to parties up there, and I ended up living in Julian and Angus's photo studio. Like,
oh my God,
I just stopped living at home, moved into there, saved up money to move to New York, and Angus and I moved to New York, and it was just like super fast like that.
That's wild. Yeah, I know Dean from No Age would always tell a story that that Angus was his counselor in like the summer the summer arts program. That Dean went to.
Yeah, that's great. right. I think like a band that Angus and I were in played that. It was like a glam rock band or like a 70s rock band. We played like for the CISA kids.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
so funny. Yeah, I think John Weiss is somewhere in the mix there as well.
Oh, Weiss went to
Motley Crue, and
Weiss went to Cal Arts, and I met Weiss at the Old Smell.
Okay, yeah.
We went to see like not together. Like that's how great LA was. Maybe it's still like that, but I went to see Red Monkey. Do you know who Red Monkey is?
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, of course, yeah.
I
forget I'm talking to like a friend from LA, so because it's trickier to talk to
long
people
ago.
Talking to someone in Berlin, being like, I went to a Red Monkey show at the Old Smell. You have to explain
the context.
You understand,
yeah.
But yeah, and Weiss was there. Like he just happened to be there, and I met him there like ages ago.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
And then Brian Rodinger is kind of the other musketeer in the mix. Brian, world. Did you meet him at that point too?
No, Brian Rodinger grew up. So I grew up in Newhall, which is where Brian grew up in technically. So we actually Brian and I went to the same elementary school.
Oh
so
my God.
I met Brian Rodinger when I was still going back to live with like my mom on the weekends. So like 4th grade. fourth grade. I met Brian Rottinger.
Oh my God! Oh, so you guys have been friends since then? Or I didn't know you were the same age.
Yeah. We were in the same grade.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, we used to skate together back then. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's amazing. What a small world. It's such a creative,
totally.
Group of people all kind of coming out of that.
That's
amazing. Oh, sorry, I'm jumping
Santa
around.
Clarita. Yep. No worries.
I know.
No worries.
All right. Yeah. No, I think about all the weirdos and people I hung out with in high school too. And it's like, the handful of them I still keep in touch with, that are just, I'll be brothers with, for life, those, small group of people, but not a ton. We had, I think the biggest celebrity or the biggest kind of, person of note that came out of our small neighborhood was Rico Suave.
Whoa, really?
He grew up on the corner of the street right where we lived.
Are you serious?
He's a couple years older than my older brothers, but he would do breakdancing. He would be out in the middle of the street with like the cardboard and spinning on his head before he was, a pop star with a bandana with his hair attached to it.
Wow. And did you like talk to him, or was he?
Yeah, no, I think he had moved out already by the time I was younger, because he was a couple of years older. But I remember I did get my like yearbook of like when I was in second grade. I think I got my yearbook signed by Rico Suave.
Whoa!
He was there, and like my mom was like, "Oh, you should go get his signature." And I'm like, "I don't know how do I get it? I had a yearbook. I'm like, that's where you get signatures in your yearbook, right? I don't know what I do."
Did he write something nasty? He's like,
"No, have a bitch in summer, stay cool." No, I don't know what he wrote, but I remember he didn't have the hair. I didn't realize he was bald. And so I think there was a big, in real life, the bandana had like the hair extensions sewn into it.
It's probably more cost effective that way. You just change the bandana rather than like the plugs.
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent.
But that was the only person I knew in our neighborhood that had anything going on.
And you're from Sun Valley? Like, I think I remember.
No, I grew up in a small town called Walnut, which was near Pomona and Diamond Bar.
Oh,
which was kind of out that way.
I know Walnut. Yeah. I know Walnut.
We had a big, I don't know what the stair count was. I mean, it's like 27 stairs. It was a big rail. Jeff Rowley 50-50'd it, but it's gone on. If you look up Walnut High, front, the stairs, the rail there is huge. It like comes up, it's like almost to shoulder height. That's above armpit height, like at the top stair. So people launching off of it really get down about 6 stairs before you can really do anything on it. It's huge. There's a great like clip on YouTube, a clip compilation of all the tricks that were done on this. But it's a massive stair rail.
I think I know that one. Yeah, because I don't skateboard, but I still follow it.
Sure. Yeah. Same.
Always.
Something I grew up doing it and breaking myself every day.
Yeah.
I got to an age where I'm like, ow, this hurts. I don't want to be. I'm tired of walking around with with a limp and bruised shins and hips, and, ribs. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll try something else.
Well, and if you bust your ass, like a bunch of kids can't go to see a No Age show. You know what I mean? It's not like there's more at stake.
Well, that was the thing we had at that house in off Melrose and La Brea. Once Dean eventually moved in, and then a friend of ours was like, "Hey, do you guys want on a mini ramp?" We had a small little backyard, and so we got this like really tight, like almost like legit, like pipe, like half pipe, and then we cut it in half. Got a U-Haul, brought it over, and then so it's a really tight transition on both sides, and then way too much flat in the middle. Like it was, we took someone's bad design and kind of made it worse in some ways, but we had it there, and it was really fun. But I would fall on that all the time. This was right after college. It was kind of the end. This was sort of the end of my skating life when I just realized, like, even having a ramp at the house, as much fun as it was like, I just I'm tired of being hurt all the time. I had loose shoulders and would dislocate shoulders, all the time. And it got to be too much.
No, I understand that moment in time. It was a sad moment, but you just had to let it go.
Yeah. My life was not going to be lived on a skateboard like I thought it was going to be when I was, 15. We'll never be off the skateboard. And then fast forward 10 years, by 25, I'm just a wreck. I'm just all just scars and surgeries put together, hanging together with, tinfoil and rubber bands. I'm like, no, maybe I'll try something else. But still, I feel like it's in your blood. Once you do it, you're always obsessed.
Of course. It's like, I forget who it was. Someone said it just changes the way you view cities. because you skateboarders repurpose everything for a different reason. I mean, like, you know, I surf too, but it doesn't have that kind of effect on you. How if you see a spot, if you're driving, I don't care what you're doing or what mood you're in, and you see a sick skate spot, you're not going to skate it. I'm not going to skate it, but you're like, whoa, you're trying to figure out who to tell about it.
It jumps out. Yeah.
Maybe
out.
I know you know more skateboarders than I do, but I'm like, damn, I can't tell anybody about that spot.
Well, the funny thing now is once you see something, if you are, communicate to these skaters, it's like the modern skateboarder is an encyclopedia of spots and tricks, especially in Southern California. I mean, I feel like there's nothing in LA that hasn't been seen. I had Leo Romero come by the house to do some recording at the studio here. Oh, wow. And on the way over, he's like, oh yeah, I saw like 10 spots. He's like, sorry, I was late. I was like, went around the thing. I was like, I remember that spot. I remember that. He's like, I was taking pictures of things and sending it to filmers. Like, maybe I could get a new trick on this old spot. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, well, he's just, again, they're just so locked in. Like they know what the spot, if you name a spot, they could tell you every skater that got a trick on it and what they got and what's left to check off,
No, absolutely.
Done.
I guess it's like vintage guitar gear. Like after the internet, there's no secrets. Like it's all fair.
Everything's out there. Yeah. How much time you have to research it. One thing so that's what I said. I was going to jump around, but the arrangements and the strings, they had this kind of sonorous, like almost harmonic feel that harkened back to something that lit up a memory of these types of like arrangements that you'd find in things like Walt Disney's Alice in Wonderland, or some of these kind of like 50s sort of production things where like all of the strings kind of just with enough compression and tape sort of saturation, like really just kind of melts into this sort of beautiful wall of sound, not necessarily in a Phil Spector wall of sound kind of way, but almost in a low fidelity type of thing that just they crystallize into like, well, I don't know what this is. Is this a 14-piece string section, or is this a pad like on a synthesizer? But whatever, I think you captured something that I think that there was such a play in it, specifically on a song like Strawberry Fields. Is that the name?
Strawberry Hill.
On the last song on the record, Strawberry Hill. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about that and some of the production techniques or how you got some of those sounds?
I think I love all the Disney orchestral arrangements. Like something I thought of, and it's great when I get to talk about the record with people because there's no wrong answer and it reminds me of things that I hadn't thought about before. But do you know that song, A Theme from a Summer Place? I'm sure you'll know it when you hear it. It's like it's an orchestral song like from a 50s melodrama. And it used to be exit music to Magic Mountain.
Oh my God.
Like when it would close and they'd kick you out, they'd play this music, Theme from a Summer Place. And when I was a little kid, I was babysat by Magic Mountain because you could get like a season pass for dirt cheap, and there's no one there. I'm sure it's way different now, but I think that's like how it kind of got ingrained in me. But the production on this record, like I've been meaning to do, like I don't have the guts or I just don't have the time or a bit of both, like to show the gear I used to make this record, but it's like I use nothing. I mean, I had a friend of mine, Morgan, who did some winds, and I kept him on the record because it just sounded better and it was amazing to have him. But a lot of it I tried to do like quote unquote real re-recordings, like using strings or something. And I ended up preferring, like I use a lot of stuff with Reactor. Like there's like they have a lot of like orchestral, like just plugins, and would just play it on a piano. Cause like in contrast to the first Nonpareils record, I wanted to just have everything blank. Like when I started this song, just have it be just blank and scary, and just really try to make up the melodies that I was sort of imagining or feeling. Like, whereas like the first one, I built these sort of ensembles to manipulate sound so that it would be a surprise, but there would be a sound. And I sort of would build what enabled the sound. Does that make sense? Like technically I would build something where the sound would be a surprise. Whereas this is the exact opposite, where I sort of envision like an arrangement or a melody and would have to like, play it. And so it started out where I was like, okay, I'm going to do these orchestral arrangements or have saxophone or whatever. And then I'll eventually have someone re-record it and I'll have like a quote unquote real one. Two things happen. Like in some instances, except for Morgan, where Morgan sounded incredible and he brought some ideas to a track, like, two things happen. I usually preferred the sound of the plug-in instrument because like to me, they sounded good. And it's not when I like thought of the sound, I was like, I need a quote unquote real one. I was like, no, that's exactly what I was thinking. So that is the real sound. And then the second thing was, it's like, I just realized, like, why do I have to hang on to this authenticity to what a real sound is? If it matches my idea or the emotion that I'm trying to communicate, there is no source. There's just a sound. And I think that was very liberating because it's like, you know, I use analog, I use digital. It's more just about capturing that sort of feeling. And, so it was wonderful. Like I really didn't give a shit about like, yeah, you know, like as a guitar player, you understand, like I really got back into playing guitar and I didn't care what amp I used. Like I literally did not care. I just more cared about, okay, I'm going to record something loud. It has to feedback and you dial in whatever amp it is for that segment, you know, like it wasn't my amp. It was like, I don't know. Some of the amps were super like nasty looking or like cheesy, but it was very liberating. So I just was chasing the sound.
I think I totally can relate. You know, there's that feeling of just like, it's like writing to the final effect or the final sound, and whatever it is that gets you to that sound that you have in your mind, that's the correct answer to the question of how do I get the sound? You know, it's like especially if you have something in mind, like you say, versus an experiment that you're setting up. Like I want to hear what this guitar sounds like on this amp with this pedal in this room. And then you don't know what the effect, you don't know what the final outcome will be, but you're more of an experimental sort of, you know, situation to see what will come out of it based on the materials, like process oriented sort of thing versus here's the sound I have in my head, whatever is the straightest line to get to that, or the thing that gets that sound to come out of the speakers wins.
Yeah.
There's, you know, we live in a time where, you know, the software and the amount of high sample rate sampled, you know, real instruments is phenomenal. It really is that.
No,
like,
absolutely.
We're spoiled with, you know, the real sounding instruments that you couldn't even if you had that instrument in your room, the quality of the mic, the compression and the adjustment and the reverb that you could get versus just, you know, trying a plugin that just has, you know, all of those quantities, qualifications already, you know, mapped into it. Like,
no,
it just sounds like a
absolutely.
finished piece of music. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think I learned that like a while ago when I was like really trying, like over 10 years ago, when I was really trying to understand and be able to use analog, since, you know, no matter how much effort I put into like having it be analog, I would be the person who would have to record it. And I don't have the skill. It just ended up sounding lo-fi and shitty anyway. So, you know, and I think that's the thing you contend with. And like, I sort of feel like I didn't want, like, it would be a dream if I used the album as it is as a demo and I got to take it to like some people and like get to be with people who could orchestrate it and meet people and discuss it. So it's not just such an internal experience, but since I couldn't do that, I don't have the money to do that or the time or, you know, I think it's kind of, to me, it sounds like exactly what I wanted to communicate. And I think it just represents the idea of it rather than like a shopping list of gear that I had to like purchase before I could express an idea. I thought like at a certain point, I thought that was very, for me, like backwards. Like, oh, I can't record this because it's not real. And I think like after I kind of proved it to myself with like one or two instruments where I re-recorded them, I was like, this is not real. Me chasing after what other
just an
people,
artifice.
Yeah,
that happens. Another third. It's like a game of telephone. The further away you get from the written or from the idea that you had in your mind, the more interpretation there is, and it comes kind of like waters it down in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's the only way I could sort of make it less convoluted. Is it seemed to be like chasing a source, not a sound, whereas really I was just more about capturing sounds that sort of hopefully can communicate the emotion that I was going through at the time. So
yeah, well, it totally makes sense too. I mean, it harkens back to that idea too. I think that, you know, of people that we were influenced by early on in life, where, you know, it was like all these cool 60s offset guitars were just the pawn shop cheap guitars, you know, in the 80s. Like you couldn't give away a Jaguar. You know, those were the $100 guitars you'd find that were not cool. And then you know, the all stars of the 90s, Sonic Youth and Nirvana et al. You know, brought these guitars because they were cheap, and people were throwing them away, and you could break them. It didn't matter because there were an unlimited supply of used, you know, cool guitars at the pawn shops. And so you know, but then by the time it gets to us, you know, into the mainstream, they're like, oh, they're celebrated now. This is the special reissue of the, you know, the cheapest guitar that you could find at the time. You know, that's just the nature of fashion and style. Those stuff will come back into play. But so in that same kind of fashion, you know, just like, well, here's the equipment that's at hand. You know, I have, you know, these plugins that are not horribly expensive. It's affordable, and it's a way to express myself, you know, in that kind of like just using what you have almost in a thrift store sort of kind of way of like, yeah, I'll get a cracked version of this of this program and write a whole record on it.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I remember a musician I know, like he made an entire album on like a PlayStation program. I didn't even know, like I thought only games, I'm not a gamer, but I thought only games existed for PlayStation. He had this like recording setup. I'm like, wow, you made the entire record on this. Yeah. And it was just the best thing because not only was it super creative and just idea driven, but after the fact, my mind just kept thinking about, wow, if this person had, you know, these racks of synths or gear that, you know, you see people, they do interviews in their studio and they just have like all the, like probably most of it they rented from Guitar Center, they're going to take back, but it's just like, you know, to each is their own. And I don't think that that's always a bad thing. Like, I think it's only when the idea that you need that before an idea could come out is a bit like backwards, but like, it doesn't mean that I don't like fidelity and having someone who cares about that and is good at that. Like, I wish I had someone who was my companion, you know, but since I didn't, I'm not going to pretend that I had, you know, it. Yeah.
It all comes from one place. I saw this. It was flashing on this this meme. I follow this Instagram account called like Jazz Memes, and they had a clip of Herbie Hancock and Quincy Jones in the '80s, like messing around with early Fairlights and these kinds of things. And the caption is just like two jazz heavyweights, and they're just like making frog sounds, like ribbit, 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 ribbit. Like this is what they do with the material or with the new technology. I mean,
it's true. I mean, Herbie did Rocket though.
Of course. Oh no, they did a lot of great stuff with that stuff. You know what I mean? But it was just fun to kind of see them but again, you just have to play around. Like, you don't know. Sometimes the technology or the options can just paralyze you, or almost just, you have to simplify it, just to understand what it is, versus that kind of feeling of like, well, here's what I'm comfortable with. This may not be the highest thing, or this may not be the bleeding edge technology right now, but I'm comfortable in this world. This I can play with, and I'm not afraid I'm going to break it, or I'm going to do something crazy with it. I don't know. I think it's in that way where just sometimes it's the gear you feel comfortable with. Like I love taking cheap guitars on the road because I can lean them up against the amp and I'm not afraid it's going to fall over. And if it does fall over, it's fine. You know what I mean? I'd be so paralyzed if I had a $1,000, a few $1,000s worth of equipment sitting on stage, and like, oh yeah, it just could blow up or disappear, get stolen. It's like, oh, here's the stuff I'm comfortable to be creative with because I'm not afraid of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I think I try to learn, like, I'm not like a lo-fi champion or like I said, I really would have loved to have worked with people who could teach me more how to like record things properly, and also like give someone else the freedom to like express that type of expertise. Mm-hmm. So it's not that I'm against it, again, like, just to be clear, like, I think like for my use with this record, I felt like the first Nonpareils record was so heady with like what I was using and is it unique and did I build it or did I make it? And I just didn't want to, I wanted to go in the opposite direction, really.
And that's what's fun about being able to make a series of albums, is that you're able to kind of examine your process in place, like as a body of work as it grows.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like Dean and I always have that conversation. There's the pendulum that'll swing. It's like, this one's the live one. This will be the studio one. This will be the live one. Then we'll get so tired of all the studio stuff. Then let's just simplify it in something that's, fun to explode live on stage.
Because I think that's a great thing. And maybe it's like people who grew up around the same time. It's like, I'm for sure an album person. I still listen to albums, not playlists.
Yeah.
I mean, in certain situations, I'll listen to a playlist, but like, I love it when you check out an artist's body of work, and the records are almost like a sequence in an album, but really like, like an example that like an example that comes to mind immediately for me is like Royal Trucks, for example. Like they have their early period, then they have this end period, and when you look at it as a whole, it's more, it communicates more about their like identity a bit, I think, or even like Sonic Youth is a great example.
It's frightening sometimes, in retrospect, how flat or how flattened time can be, when you think of a band, from like, or I think of a band like Husker Du, from like the early days to then, and where it's just they're running on meth and coffee, recording, Zen Arcade, in 14 days, double album. And then to like the last record, we were just like, they all hate each other. They're not talking to each other. This is a whole totally different thing. You know what I mean? But it's like, but you can listen to it in the matter of an hour. You can just cover an artist's entire like career, and just by listening to these songs, you're just like, wow, what it really does get reduced down to those things. And the more you know about the artist or what they've gone through and what their biography is, it'll tell you something. But at the end of the day, the songs stand the test of time, or they don't. It's the songs or the
thing. For sure. And I think like what's really interesting is like, I'm sure this happens to you a lot. Like when you're younger, you prefer like the more aggressive early years, and like when it becomes a double album, you're like, oh geez. And then by now you're just reaching for the double album. You're like, oh, what? It's the song's shorter than 20 minutes, But I had this conversation with somebody about the Germs. Like the Germs are maybe my favorite band. And I was trying to explain like why they're different to me and like what they mean to me. And I wish like the Germs were around to have like a fifth album. Like, could you imagine what that fifth album would sound like? And I think it just makes me so sad. Like, but I always imagine that, like what the second Germs album would sound like.
What could have been, where they would have gone, the crossover metal record, the goth record, you know what I mean? You can kind of see the...
I think they would have been like Sparks in some crazy way, or like, you know what I mean?
Operatic or something. Sure, yeah, why not?
I feel that. Yeah. I can't confirm, but no one can confirm.
That's a fun game to play, though. Yeah, exactly. Why not? Yeah, theorize it.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be fun. Yeah, that'd be almost in a fun way of like in that sort of like a writer's block breaking, sort of game to play. Like, I wanted to write the fifth Germs record that they made in '95 in Berlin. You know what I mean? By like where Trent Reznor had produced it. You know what I mean? Like, what was that record going to be like? Or the
when they bring in when they onboard the hot talent to like revitalize their
right.
bloated career. Like I would kill to hear that record.
Well, yeah. Two thoughts. One, Okie Dog just closed. I didn't realize it was even still open, but it was officially just now. It's officially shuttered. I was talking to do you know Brooks from Ringler Brutes? Brooks Headley. He's a chef. A great restaurant called Superiority Burger.
I know the name. I don't know him personally, but he was in Born Against, obviously, right?
Born Against, yeah. Universal Order of Armageddon. But I was, I just saw him over the weekend, and a friend was saying like, "Oh, Okie Dog just closed. That should be the L.A. Superiority Burger. That'd be perfect." The kind of the reimagined high class punk sort of vegan burger joint. But but the other thing too, in that regards, I saw the David Bowie tour where he brought Nine Inch Nails, and that was probably somewhere in the mid '90s.
Did you see that?
Afraid of Americans, yeah.
Oh, the Earthling record.
Or Earthling record, yeah. It was, and I have to say, like, just from my perspective, I was a kid, I was probably in junior high or going into high school or something, and Nine Inch Nails were incredible. But by the time David Bowie came on, he was a concept. He wasn't playing, David Bowie hits. He was doing the new record and everything. But I felt myself like going, what happened? Like the Nine Inch Nails stuff was so explosive, and it was that kind of thing. I think it was meant to sort of re-energize him, or I don't know, where David Bowie's connection was with it at that point. But we saw it at the Forum, and it really felt like half the audience left, and I was being a kid. I'm like, I don't know what's happening here. I have no context for what David Bowie's doing in this position, especially after Nine Inch Nails just, exploded.
No, I can imagine.
45 minutes opening. It was just like, it was hard to follow that.
I can imagine, Bowie. I mean, like, I remember like when I was a kid and you first hear David Bowie, it's not that I didn't have this grand context where he influenced so many people. I just knew him as the Dancing in the Streets guy with Mick Jagger, right?
Sure, Labyrinth, I knew that.
Labyrinth is such a good record. I like, but and like, the more you learn about him, the more you connect with them or you don't. But I can imagine that seeing him as a kid, I wouldn't have gotten it at all. Like I liked a lot of like classic rock at that time already, but I think my guitar teacher, she was like a heavy metaler, like a really badass shredder. That's awesome. She would teach me some Bowie songs. I'd be like, wow, you're into Bowie? And I was like, at that point, like 13, I'm like, damn, if she likes Bowie, like I should re-question it. But it would have been weird. Like 9 Inch Nails, you're just like,
It was so much of the time in the zeitgeist in the moment, I think, of that era, whenever that was for them. It was probably, they were already, MTV darlings at that point. And I think it was an opportunity for them to kind of connect with one of their heroes by doing the opening slot of this giant arena tour, which probably, up the ante for them. But it was, it was hard to sort of quantify it. I think at that point, I knew of Bowie was like the greatest hits, and my mom had like the Changes, the greatest hits CD, and but even that, it's like it's an incredible record as a greatest hits, but it's one of those things you go through and there's a lot of catalog in the Bowie catalog that is not on the greatest hits, and it's not all great. It's one of those hard things. I'm just like, I'm sorry. Like I've had friends, like, some of those like dark secrets or guilty secrets, you play on tour or something. It's like, I remember one of our friends we had in the van was like, my secret is I don't love David Bowie. I don't think he's that great. And everyone's like, oh, and everybody argued. But then you start to argue for a while and you're like, well, I mean, there's a lot of context. You really have to put it into context. You have to understand what it is. And then, but it's interesting. He's definitely one of those careers that I think was unique to him. I don't think, as much as people have been inspired by him, it's hard to really, duplicate it because he was so unique and it made sense for him at that time. I think if you were just to go on face value, it wouldn't necessarily, cross over.
Well, it's funny, like you mentioned it, because I've lived in Berlin for 10 years now, and like David Bowie's obviously not German, but he's probably the biggest artist to come out of Berlin. It's like it's an institution.
His Berlin trilogy, and it was a huge thing. Hosa Studios,
and you can't escape it. And I'll be honest with you, like I like Bowie, but he was never like a mind blower for me. Like he never. Like I've listened to it, I've tried, and some of his records I think are incredible, but he wasn't like for example, I listen to T-Rex way more, like I know T-Rex records front and back, and Bowie I appreciate, obviously, like we're talking about the Germs, like how influential he was with the Germs, or I was reading Kid Congo Powers' autobiography, and he's talking about Bowie, and of course, if you love Kid Congo Powers, you that's the exciting thing, is like traveling that path. And like with Bowie, he's everywhere and it's undeniable. But yeah, I've played this game where it's like, well, surely you love Low. My favorite Bowie record. Favorite Bowie records, like, and I'm not like, this sounds like I'm trying to be like contrarian or provocative, but my favorite Bowie records are the 2 Iggy Pop records. Like I think that they're David Bowie records, but also with Iggy Pop. And I think like, those, like, I love those records. Like,
say like Transformer, like the Lou Reed Transformer record is a great David Bowie record. That that has so much of someone else. But I always think like Spiders from Mars is probably the one I would say like that is a good place to start if you had to throw a dart at a almost incomprehensible like conceptual artist's body of work over 5 decades of dense conceptual records. That's a good place to kind of get a taste of it because it's big and it's glammy and there's songs you would know from it, and that's one I know the most, and you can sing along to them. They're anthemic, and Mick Ronson's great guitar player. There's all these little things you can like pull out of that record. I think is a place to start.
I mean, I think he's got incredible stuff. Like totally, it's like I agree. Like he's got incredible. But he was stuff. Also he was that chameleon though too. I mean, if you've seen interviews with other people he's worked with, like Nile Rodgers, or these different, and it's like he was able to bring in all these collaborators. I think in so many ways it's that producer mentality of like he could set the scene with the musicians and then and sort of make a setting for his songwriting at that time and place, and he always had his finger kind of on the pulse of what was next and what was hip in that kind of way. Which I think almost has more of an influence. I think when people think of David Bowie, it's that being so cool. He was always so cool, and it was like whether or not you loved all the songs, he always had a single in every decade that sort of defined was the sign marker or post of what was cool in that decade. Yeah,
and that's something.
I think also like again, not to take away from his music because I think he has some like masterpieces, without a doubt. I think something that's really important that he did, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he made it so that a rock and roll frontman didn't have to be like an idiot or an asshole. You could be you could be elegant, you could be into art or dance or other things and be all the much better for it. And I think that was such a powerful thing for kids to see, and I think that's why he clearly influenced all of like our favorite artists. Whether our connection may
makes sense,
and I think like if you look at the frontman, I love classic rock. It's maybe like my favorite music. So it's not a diss in any way, but like if you think of like putting frontmen in a room together. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Robert Plant and Roger Daltrey.
Mm-hmm. I mean, So I think like that's something that is very inspiring. I think like,
I think he took chances, and maybe that's almost part of the enduring legacy of David Bowie in some ways is that he wasn't afraid to fail. And things that were maybe not considered, pop hits or commercial successes, he's still considered, as important as the ones that were popular. And it was sort of that taking those big swings. I think if anything, it's influenced our generation in that kind of way of like, it's all out there. You put it out, you can make this, almost incomprehensible, dense, drugged, fueled records, whether the super highs or the super lows, and it sort of counts towards your like body of work for better or worse. It sort of gave permission for a lot of self-indulgence, but I think in some ways too, but also made it understandable that like it's an artist's job to explore all of those things and to not be afraid if they're not all hits. Because if David Bowie can survive, with not having number one hits on each record, then maybe we all can, let ourselves go a little bit.
Yeah. I think that's the key word, like explore too, I think if you explore or you're actually experimenting with something, you're going to come back with unknown results or unsuccessful results, or you explore somewhere, you come up empty handed. It's not that you always come up with like anger and war or like misanthropy, like that is its own thing, and if that's your tendency, that's fine, but it's maybe not exploring or experimenting with anything.
It reminds me, it's almost like that Jodorowsky's Dune documentary too, where the filmmaker Alejandro Jodorowsky was going to make Dune, and it never got made, but the process of that, set the ball in motion for so many other science fiction films of the 70s and 80s. Just his, bringing in, sowed the seeds for what would become Alien. Bring H.R. Geiger in to, Dan O'Bannon and all these people that would sort of later. And I think in a lot of ways, some of those Bowie records, it's the production technique and the Brian Eno and this type of reverb and the new technologies and, almost experimentations in those ways that would later go on to then be, featured.
For sure.
By other electronic artists and it was those early experimentations that sort of like, okay, cool. Like the song's not there, but the sound is there. Like what can we do with this sound? We've just heard these new sort of gated reverb things or these synths or these, abilities to create this new sound that would sort of leave a lasting legacy in some ways too.
Yeah, that would make the impact, exponential, like with his work, of course. But it would be funny. I just thought about it. If you did a podcast where like it was, the topic was like, what's your letdown? Like you ask every person you invite, like, actually, man, I hate David Bowie, or like, I don't know, something like that. It'd be interesting to hear what that one thing is like.
Oh yeah. That's hilarious. Yeah, no, I think it is interesting. I think there's always those things in it. So much of it. I mean, the best part about music is really you form these lifelong bonds at probably one of the dumbest, most passionate times in your life, between like 12 and 25, when you're mostly hormones and ego. You know what I mean? You're just a raging maniac and dumb as dirt and never really experienced much of anything. Most people, or at least most men, I could say at least, but the music that goes into your brain imprints, etches like it's carved in stone, like it's carved in marble on your brain, something. And to then spend the rest of your life defending it or having, passionate debates about this thing is just like, it's absurd if you really put it in context. Like, yeah, I was a dumb kid from the Valley, and I just happened to hear I heard a song on the radio and it changed my life. And it's like, that's the job of music. That's what it's supposed to do. You don't need a degree. You don't need to have a PhD. You mostly just need to have like a couple of hairs on your balls and maybe, a bad mustache growing in, and your life will never be the same. Whatever happens in those years is gonna just send you down a path for good, bad, or whatever it is. You could hear anything at that window, and it's there you go. It's the rest of your life.
But it's
congratulations.
Yeah, absolutely. But like as you get older, it's like any issue you carry around from your youth. You're like, you kind of dig through your mental record collection, like, you know what? I don't have to like pretend that I like this shit anymore.
Yeah. Right. You can move past it. Right. It's allowed. Yeah. Give yourself that grace. You throw one record out and bring one record in. Like forgive one record and let one record go. One goes out, one comes in. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I can't think of any examples offhand, but like the times where I'm just like, I don't have to try getting into that person anymore.
I'm old enough to realize, it's not for me.
It's done.
It's just not going to happen.
I look forward to being surprised by things I was never into, but I don't need to carry around those like artists where I'm just like, yeah, maybe this year I'll understand.
I'm going to crack it. I'm going to get into it. Oh my God. Well, our time has flown by so fast. I'm trying to think where do you want people to find you? How do you like people to discover you online? Do you want them to follow you on any of the socials, or what's the best way for people to know more about the record and what you're up to?
Whatever's more convenient for people. I mean, like, whatever's easiest. I know that's a stupid answer, but I just feel grateful if anyone's interested. So it's just
cool.
Yeah, I think like you can look in all the typical places like Instagram or Spotify. Like Mute's putting the record out. There's probably information on Mute, but yeah, Mute.com.
Okay, heck yeah. Well, all right, we'll go to Mute.com. And how do you even pronounce it? Nonpareils?
Oh, Nonpareils.
Nonpareils. Okay. Just Google that, and then Rhetoric and Terror. Find it. It's out there. It's available. Will you be touring?
I am putting a live band together, but it's going to take me a long time. So maybe I hope by next year. But yeah.
This is the warning. Get ready, everybody. You can start getting get your ticket money together. In between the Oasis reunion shows, you have to go see Nonpareils.
Get ready. During, we're competing
all at the same time.
Yeah.
There's a new beef. That'd be great. Yeah, if you just get Liam to talk shit about you in the next year, it'd be fantastic.
Oh man,
it'd be so good for your career.
I love Oasis, man. I don't want to mess with them.
Well, 2025 is going to be a fun year.
Absolutely.
We'll see live on the road, and we have a new soundtrack for the fall months coming up.
And I hope I get to see you in 3D and your kids and Diener and his kids. Like, give them all a big hug, Diener included. And thank you so much for having me, Randy. It's an honor. I'm a big fan, and mostly it's just nice to catch up with you, my friend.
It is. Awesome, man. All right, thanks.
Yes. How awesome was that, Aaron? Thank you so much for coming on the show. You are incredible. It was great to get to catch up. I feel like a lot of time had passed, and it was really sweet hearing about making the new record and a little bit about your life there in Berlin. Thank you everybody for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate it. I can't tell you enough how much it means to me that you're here every week. And if you really love what you're hearing on the show, please make sure you tell a friend. You can also go ahead and leave a review, 5 stars, and let everybody know that this show's awesome, and we have awesome guests, and we have great conversations, and you would like everyone to hear them. So tell them, listen here, buddy. And also, while I'm barking out orders and instructions at you, don't forget to go to store.mute.com, and there you can find the Nonpareils Rhetoric Terror. Oh my God, I cannot speak. Nonpareils Rhetoric and Terror. And if you order now, the first 500 copies get an exclusive signed card by Aaron himself. So you do not want to miss that. You can also go to Bandcamp. Oh no, what is it? It's nonpareilsofficial.bandcamp.com. All right, you want to hear me? Should I spell this out for you? I'll try. N-O-N, Pareils, P-A-R-E-I-L-S, official, O-F-F-I-C-I-A-L, nonpareilsofficial.bandcamp.com. Go there. Listen to the record. You can stream it. I think there's a single streaming there now. The last song on the record, Strawberry Hill, the one that we talk about in the interview, and I messed up and called Strawberry Fields. Duh. Strawberry Hill. It's an incredible song. 7 minutes of blissful, melodic, arpeggiated goodness, all straight into your eardrums. And also don't forget to go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate and get your music up there. Be inspired by what Aaron is doing and his no-nonsense, plug-in based compositions. You know what I mean? I love that he just was so open and free with it and just said, it's not about getting the best sounds out there. It's about getting the sounds that you want to hear. I totally relate to that. I totally understand that, sometimes you do something you think is going to sound better, but the thing you ended up having was what your brain was first attracted to making in the first place. You know what I mean? That's that first thought, best thought sometimes really is the truth. And I think this record is really one of those kind of revealing, sort of personal records. You just go, yes, this makes sense. You can't explain why, but it definitely, and especially knowing Aaron and knowing his background and his influences and having, talked about music at truck stops and backstages and lunches and dinners and weird coffee, breakfasts. This record is him. This is the musical embodiment of Aaron Hemphill. So you don't want to miss that. Nonpareils, Rhetoric and Terror, out everywhere tomorrow. Go grab it. Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, everybody. See you on Monday. Have a good weekend.
It's always Little Puppet. Always Little Gizmo and Little Puppet in love forever.